Welcome to Colonize the Ocean podcast, where we discuss oceanic colonization, exploration, and education with your hosts Adam Jewell and Brendan Traxler.
All right, so get this. We're diving deep today.
Deep?
Like really deep.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Underwater data centers.
Now that sounds like something straight out of sci-fi, right?
It does. But get this, it's real.
Real?
Yeah, Microsoft pulled an actual data center out of the ocean.
Oh, like covered in barnacles and seaweed and everything?
Oh yeah, the whole 9 yards.
Wow. So that's what we're diving into today, Microsoft's Project Natick.
You got it.
We got to figure out, is this just a cool experiment or could this be like the future of data storage?
And is it sustainable? So many questions.
Right.
So this whole thing started back in 2014, I think it was, during Microsoft's Think Week.
Week.
Yeah, it's where employees can pitch these crazy, innovative ideas.
Oh, like a brainstorming session.
Exactly. And Project Natick was one of those ideas.
That's wild.
I know, right? Who would have thought?
So they went from what if to actually doing it.
That's the thing. It happened so fast. By
Oh.
2015, they were already testing it out of the Pacific Ocean. Yeah, they just wanted to see, can a data center even survive underwater?
Makes sense. Got to start with the basics.
It did.
It did. Wow.
But surviving is just step one, right?
Mhm.
They had to figure out if it could actually work, for a long time.
Right. Efficiently, reliably, all of that.
That's where phase 2 comes in, the Northern Isles deployment.
Northern Isles.
Yeah, so from 2018 to 2020, they ran a whole data center off the coast of Scotland.
Okay, so they really went all in on this.
They did. And the results are pretty amazing. But
Mm.
before we get into all that, let's talk about why.
Why?
Why put a data center underwater in the first place?
Yeah, it seems kind of inconvenient, doesn't it?
It does. What's the logic there?
Well, think about it. More than half the world's population, they live near the coast.
Okay, yeah, that's true.
So if you put the data centers closer to the people, data transmission is faster.
Makes sense.
Smoother online experience for everybody.
So less lag.
Yeah, less latency.
But what about cooling? Isn't that a huge issue for data centers?
Oh, it's a massive issue.
How does being underwater help with that?
That's one of the biggest advantages, actually.
Oh, really?
The ocean's naturally cold, right? Provides a constant cool environment.
Makes sense.
So compared to land-based data centers, which use a ton of energy for cooling,
Yeah, they're energy hogs.
underwater, it's way more efficient.
Okay, so location, cooling, what other perks are there?
Well, think about it. Being underwater is like built-in protection, right?
Protection from?
Corrosion, for one, temperature swings. You know those wild fluctuations you get on land?
Oh, for sure.
Even just like accidental bumps and jostles.
Things that happen in a normal facility.
All the time, but underwater, those risks are way lower.
Out of sight, out of mind, huh?
Exactly.
Safe and sound.
But get this, reliability?
Reliability, okay.
The underwater data center, it was 8 times more reliable.
Wait, 8 times?
8 times more reliable than the ones on land.
That's wild. Is that just because of the location and the protection, or is there something else going on?
That's a good question. Yeah. So they think it might be the nitrogen atmosphere inside the container.
Nitrogen.
Yeah. So it's sealed, no oxygen, and no people going in and out messing things up.
So the servers are just chilling in their nitrogen bubble,
Pretty much.
working away undisturbed. That sounds pretty nice, actually.
Right.
Okay, tell me more about this Northern Isles location.
Okay. So,
It's Scotland, right?
yeah, it's off the coast of the Orkney Islands.
Okay.
And it's not exactly calm waters,
Oh, what's it like then?
Strong tidal currents, rough seas, pretty intense environment.
Why choose such a tough location? Just to, really test it out.
Exactly. They wanted to see how it would handle a real challenge.
And how did they even get the data center down there?
Oh, the deployment was this whole operation.
I bet.
Robots, winches, a massive barge, the whole works.
Wow, so they dropped this thing 117 feet deep into these wild waters.
Yeah, pretty much.
2 years later, they pull it back up.
Yep.
What did it look like?
Well, on the outside, picture a shipwreck covered in barnacles and algae, even sea anemones.
No kidding.
It was a whole ecosystem.
Crazy, but what about the inside? Did the equipment survive?
Oh, it more than survived. It thrived down there.
Really?
Remember that 8 times greater reliability.
Yeah,
They think the nitrogen and the lack of human interference really helped with that.
makes sense, but there's more to this story, right?
There is. You ready for this?
I'm on the edge of my seat, tell me.
Okay, so remember those crazy weather conditions in the Orkneys?
Oh, yeah.
This data center, it was running entirely on a grid powered by renewable energy.
No way.
Wind, solar, even some experimental green energy stuff.
And it worked.
It worked flawlessly.
So it wasn't just more reliable, it was running on renewable energy the whole time.
The whole time.
That changes everything, doesn't it? Like,
Yeah.
it challenges everything we thought we knew about power and sustainability.
It really does.
And these findings from Project Natick,
Yeah.
I mean, it's got everyone talking about the future.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, are we going to see underwater data centers everywhere?
Well, it's not necessarily about putting all our data centers underwater. It's about what we learned from this.
The lessons learned.
Right, and how we can apply those lessons to future designs, whether they're on land or in the ocean.
I see. So what kind of applications are we talking about here?
Well, for one, could we replicate that nitrogen atmosphere on land?
It's interesting.
Boost the reliability of land-based centers?
Yeah.
Or what about putting underwater data centers near offshore wind farms?
Oh, that's smart.
You're harnessing the power of the ocean for both data storage and energy.
So we're talking about lights out data centers,
Yeah.
minimal maintenance,
Exactly.
fewer replacement parts, and a much lower environmental footprint.
That's the idea.
And Microsoft Azure, they're pretty interested in all of this, right?
Yeah, especially for edge computing.
Edge computing.
Yeah, it's about putting data centers closer to the users, like in remote or hard-to-reach locations. Think about disaster-prone areas, places without a lot of infrastructure.
Underwater data centers could be a real game changer there.
They could.
And they were even testing out post-quantum encryption on the Northern Isles data center.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
What is that exactly?
It's basically like super advanced encryption,
Okay.
designed to protect data from quantum computers,
Quantum computers, wow.
which could potentially crack our current encryption methods.
So it's like future-proofing our data.
Exactly. But why test it underwater?
Yeah, good question.
Well, it's about real-world testing, but in a secure environment.
I see.
That underwater location, it adds another layer of physical security. Makes it ideal for testing sensitive technology.
So it's not just about whether a data center can survive underwater. It's about testing out these cutting-edge technologies that could have huge implications for data security.
Exactly. And it shows how multifaceted Project Natick really was.
It wasn't just one thing.
Right. It wasn't just about proving concept. It was about pushing the boundaries on multiple fronts.
Okay, so we've covered the why, the how, all these amazing technical achievements.
Yeah.
But what about the challenges?
The challenges.
We got to talk about those, right? What are some of the hurdles that need to be addressed before underwater data centers become more common?
You're right. We can't just ignore those.
Okay, good.
I'd say one of the biggest challenges is accessibility.
Accessibility.
For maintenance and repairs,
Right.
getting a data center up from the ocean floor.
Yeah, not easy.
It's complex. It's expensive.
It's not like sending a tech down there to swap out a hard drive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And even with all the precautions, the nitrogen, the protection, long-term maintenance is still a question mark.
Like, how do they ensure those seals are going to hold up?
Yeah, prevent leaks, corrosion over time. It's a concern.
That's a good point. It seems like there's a lot to figure out still, logistically, engineering-wise.
There is.
What about the environmental impact?
Oh, that's another crucial consideration.
Yeah, what are the potential downsides of putting these things in the ocean?
Right. So Project Natick, they focus on minimizing their footprint.
Okay.
But we need more research to understand the long-term effects
The long-term effect.
on marine ecosystems.
Right.
We got to make sure these data centers aren't disrupting habitats.
Oh, polluting.
Or polluting, exactly. We can't just assume it'll be fine.
It's a delicate balance.
It is, and then there's the regulatory hurdles.
Ah, the red tape.
Lots of legal stuff, permitting processes.
And that varies depending on where you are, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So it's not just about the tech itself.
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
about the environment, the social impact, the politics of it all.
You got it.
It's a lot.
It is, and there's scalability.
Scalability, what do you mean?
So Project Natick, that was one data center.
Right, container sized.
To meet the demands of, huge cloud services,
Yeah,
we'd need a major leap forward in engineering and logistics,
I can imagine.
and maybe even collaboration between different companies.
So underwater data centers, they're viable,
It seems so.
but we've got a ways to go before they're everywhere.
That's true, but that's how innovation works, right?
Yeah.
It's a process. You experiment, you learn, you adapt.
And who knows what other wild ideas are out there waiting to be discovered.
Exactly. That's what's so exciting about all of this.
We're just scratching the surface.
We are.
Speaking of scratching the surface, we haven't even talked about the data itself.
The data.
Yeah, what was this underwater data center actually processing?
That's a good question, but unfortunately,
Unfortunately.
the specifics of the data are confidential.
Oh, okay.
But we do know it was for internal Microsoft purposes,
Internal.
mostly testing different cloud computing scenarios.
So it was more about how the data center performed, less about the specific data itself.
Precisely. Think of it as a real-world stress test for their cloud infrastructure.
Pushing it to the limits.
It's exactly looking at performance, reliability, energy efficiency.
And all this powered by renewable energy, that's pretty impressive.
It is, and it seems like it performed exceptionally well.
So win-win for performance and sustainability.
You could say that.
Did they share any insights about what they learned from actually processing data underwater?
They've been pretty quiet about the specifics,
Ah.
but they did say the data helped validate some of their initial hypotheses.
So this whole thing, it wasn't a fluke.
No, not at all.
It reinforced the idea that underwater data centers have real potential.
That's right. And it provided valuable insights for future versions, you know?
Right, because this Northern Isles deployment, it wasn't the end goal.
No.
It was just the beginning.
It was about learning and refining the technology.
So this was just step one.
I think that's a great way to put it.
Project Natick, it opened up this whole new world of possibilities.
A whole new way of thinking about data storage.
And now it's about figuring out, okay, what are the possibilities? What are the challenges? And where does this technology fit into the future of cloud computing and sustainability?
That's the big question.
And as we've been talking about, we got to do all of this responsibly, right?
Absolutely.
Think about the environment. Think about the impact on society.
It's not just about the tech itself.
It's about the bigger picture.
Exactly.
Well said. And I think that's a great place to pause for.
It's a good stopping point.
We've covered a lot, from the technical details of Project Natick
A lot of details.
to the implications for data storage, sustainability, and responsible innovation.
It's been quite a journey.
It has, and I'm already excited to dive into the next part where we'll explore, well, you'll have to wait and see.
I think our listeners will be surprised.
I'm still blown away that they actually put a data center at the bottom of the ocean.
Right.
Like, that's just crazy to me.
It's thinking outside the box, that's for sure.
For real. And we haven't even gotten into, like, the technical stuff.
Oh, there's a lot of cool tech behind this.
I know. What are some of the details that really stood out to you?
So let's talk about that nitrogen atmosphere for a second.
Right.
It wasn't just about keeping things stable in there.
What else was it for?
Corrosion. Big issue for electronics, especially in salt water.
Oh, yeah, of course.
So no oxygen, no corrosion.
Smart.
And it looks like it worked.
Really?
Based on the data from the retrieved data center, the nitrogen did its job.
So they didn't find much corrosion on the servers.
Minimal signs of degradation. Pretty amazing after 2 years underwater.
That's wild. Like, they were practically brand new.
It makes you think, could we do this on land too?
Extend the lifespan of servers, reduce waste.
Exactly.
And you mentioned post-quantum encryption before.
Oh, yeah?
Can you break that down a bit?
So basically, it's a new type of encryption. It's designed to protect data from quantum computers.
Quantum computers, those are going to be a game changer.
It could be, and the problem is they might be able to crack our current encryption.
So this is like next level security.
Exactly. It's about staying ahead of the curve.
But why test it on an underwater data center?
Well, couple of reasons.
Okay.
First, it's real-world testing, but it's also super secure.
How so?
That underwater location, it's like an extra layer of physical security.
Nobody's going to be sneaking down there.
Exactly. So it's perfect for testing out sensitive tech.
So Project Natick, it wasn't just about putting a data center underwater.
No, not at all.
It was about testing the limits of all this new technology.
Pushing the boundaries on multiple fronts.
Okay, so we've talked about the why, the how, the amazing tech.
We have.
But what about the challenges? Like, let's be real, there's got to be some downsides to all of this.
Oh, there are definitely challenges.
Okay, good. I was starting to think it was all sunshine and rainbows.
I wish.
So what are some of the biggest hurdles?
Accessibility is a big one.
Accessibility.
Yeah, for maintenance and repairs.
Right, we talked about that.
It's not easy getting a data center up from the ocean floor.
No, not at all.
Expensive, complicated.
And even with all the nitrogen and protection,
yeah.
what about long-term maintenance?
Well, that's a big question mark.
Like, are those seals going to hold up over time?
Exactly. Preventing leaks, corrosion, That's a concern.
A valid concern.
Yeah, and then there's the environmental impact.
Right. We can't forget about that.
So Project Natick, they were all about minimizing their footprint.
Which is great.
But we need more research to really understand the long-term effects on the ocean.
On marine life, habitats.
Exactly. We got to make sure these data centers aren't causing harm.
We can't just assume it'll be fine.
We can't.
And then there's the whole regulatory side of things.
Ugh, the red tape.
Permits, legal stuff.
And it's different everywhere you go.
It's complicated.
It is. And then there's the question of scale.
Scale, what do you mean?
So Project Natick, that was one small data center.
Right.
To meet the needs of like massive cloud services, we'd need to scale up big time.
That makes sense.
A lot more engineering, logistics, maybe even collaboration between different companies.
It's a huge undertaking.
It is, but Project Natick showed us it's possible.
It's definitely a step in the right direction.
It is, and it sparked a lot of important conversations about the future of data storage.
And not just about the tech itself,
Right.
but about sustainability, responsibility.
The thinking about the bigger picture.
It's all connected.
It is, and it's exciting to see where this all goes.
Speaking of which, we haven't even talked about what kind of data they were processing in this underwater data center.
Yes, the data itself.
Okay, so before we got sidetracked, talking about responsible innovation and all that, we were talking about the data itself.
Right, right.
What exactly were they processing in this underwater data center?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, the actual details of the data, that's confidential.
Oh.
But we do know it was for Microsoft's own use.
Internal stuff.
Yeah, mostly testing different cloud computing scenarios, seeing how it all worked.
So it wasn't so much about the specific data.
No.
It was about how the data center performed in this crazy environment.
Exactly, like a real-world stress test for their cloud infrastructure.
Seeing how it held up.
Exactly, looking at performance, reliability, energy efficiency, all that good stuff.
And remember, all of this was powered by renewable energy.
Right, wind, solar, the whole package.
Did they say anything about how efficient it was, like how much energy it used?
They haven't released specific numbers on energy consumption,
Oh, okay.
but they did say the Northern Isles data center was super efficient.
Which makes sense, right? The ocean does a lot of the cooling for you.
Exactly. No need for those massive energy-guzzling cooling systems.
So good for performance, good for the environment.
It seems like it.
What about the data itself? Did they learn anything interesting from processing it underwater?
They've been pretty tight-lipped about the details,
Of course.
but they did say the data helped confirm some of their initial ideas.
About underwater data centers.
Yeah, about how reliable they are, how efficient they can be.
So it wasn't just a lucky guess.
No, it wasn't a fluke.
They had some evidence to back it up.
Exactly, and they also learned a lot that they can use to improve the technology.
Because this wasn't the final version.
Oh, they're definitely not.
The Northern Isles deployment, it was just the beginning.
Please, stepping stone.
Project Natick, it opened up this whole new world of possibilities.
A whole new way of thinking about data storage.
And now it's about, okay, where do we go from here?
What are the possibilities?
What are the challenges?
How do we make this technology even better?
And how do we make sure it's sustainable?
Right, how do we do all of this responsibly?
Not just for the environment.
But for society as a whole.
That's the key, right? Innovation without responsibility, it's not going to get us very far.
Exactly. It's like a ship without a rudder.
You might move forward, but you're probably going to crash into something eventually.
A very good analogy.
And that brings us back to what we've been talking about this whole time. The power of innovation, it's incredible. It can change the world.
But we have to use it wisely.
It's a responsibility
It is.
to make sure we're using this power for good.
To create a better future for everyone.
Well said.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of underwater data centers,
It's been quite a journey.
it has, and I think there are a few key takeaways we should leave our listeners with.
I agree. Let's recap. First of all, underwater data centers, they're not science fiction anymore.
No, they're real.
Project Natick proved that this technology, it works,
It's viable.
and it has the potential to change the game.
Absolutely. Think about all the advantages.
Being close to the people who need the data,
The natural cooling from the ocean,
increased reliability.
and the possibility of running entirely on renewable energy.
It's pretty amazing.
It is, but we can't forget about the challenges.
Oh, there are definitely challenges.
Maintenance, the environment, regulations. We need more innovation to make this technology scalable and sustainable.
It's a complex issue.
It is.
But at the end of the day, it comes down to balance
Alan,
between innovation and responsibility.
making sure we're using this technology to create a better world.
For everyone, not just a select few. And that's what we should all be thinking about as we move forward.
As we explore the possibilities of the future.
Because the future isn't something that just happens to us.
we create the future.
Through our choices, our actions, our commitment to doing things the right way.
And that's a great note to end on.
I think so, too.
So as you're imagining those data centers submerged in the ocean depths.
It's a pretty cool image.
It is. Remember that the future is in our hands.
Well said. And that wraps up this episode of The Deep Dive.
Thanks for joining us.
We'll see you next time.